All right, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Sugar House Community Council meeting tonight. Looks like we're going to be on Zoom for, I don't know how long. Could be a while. It's hard to believe it's 2022. I was telling people in an email yesterday that my son turned 15 yesterday. It's wild. Hope everybody's staying safe. Just to talk about the agenda quickly, tonight we're going to spend about an hour with our usual stuff. Bill Knowles is here to talk about construction. Shane Stroud put together a presentation about our bylaws. Put in a lot of work for it. And then from 8 to 9, Will Coker is going to run kind of our legislative town hall with our representatives. So let's just get to it. So we'll start with Mike Bagley with the Treasury Report. Go ahead, Mike.
You got me now. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to the meeting. So January Treasury Report, our balance at US Bank, $7,462.77 when I logged in earlier today. And for December, we paid out $80. That was for flyers for outreach, reimbursement for flyers for outreach. And then I noticed I logged into the PayPal account. We had $628.74. And I just transferred all those funds over to the US Bank account. I was looking through those, and those were all donations, generous donations from our trustees and from Oleo as well, Oleo Skin Products. So thank you, everybody, for thinking about us in your end of the year giving into your donations. So appreciate it. And that's what I got for you guys today.
Thank you. Hey, Erica, do you mind talking about the micro grant?
Sure thing. I'm excited to. So we received a micro grant in 2021 to obtain the tech needed to create maps of the Sugar House area. The maps are capable of also creating tours. One request that we've had repeatedly is to have a map created of public parking within Sugar House. This will also support tours such as the art walks. So we purchased that from a company called MapMe, and we also paid for some of the tech support that we need to actually implement it on our website and create pages that will have these maps live. We initially had talked about purchasing an app, but went with a tool that didn't require an app download so that it would be more accessible to everyone in the public to get the information that we put there. So I do have a couple of, I have a couple screens up. I could show what they'll look like if you would like, or if we're tight on time.
Let's go ahead.
Okay. If you'll enable, all right, I think I've got sharing here. Great. Okay, the first one I'm going to show you will be this is an example of what of a tour site that is created using this tour software called MapMe. So here you can see that there's the first stop, number 1, is a market, and then it corresponds over to the left bar where you can open up and actually have information, recordings.
Welcome to the Warehouse District Tour.
There you go. So you can put quite a bit of information over here about each one of the stops. And in this use, this is where it would guide somebody through like a walking tour, driving tour, that sort of thing. Here is just the first map with a central point placed. We're now getting ready to start adding data. I'll need to connect with one of our folks in transportation at the city. They've got some mapping information on parking available, they said, so I want to grab that. Plus we'll be crowdsourcing with everyone's resources to get all of those on the map. And our subscription allows 2 maps. So one would be general with chamber members, but then also parks and points of interest, parking, all of that would be on there. And you're able to sort that. So if somebody just wanted coffee shops or just wanted parking, then they can sort it to just show that item. The second map I'm holding aside to be things like this, like the tour, so that when we have local events, we can actually custom populate the map for those events with a little bit of information. So that's it in a nutshell.
I think this is great.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you very much for the help with submitting for the grant. And that $1,500 we are putting to really good use. It will be due for renewal in a year. So at the end of this year, we'll need to renew the subscription. But by then, I think we'll also have a plenty of examples of how it's been put to good use. It should hopefully be easier to either obtain another grant or donations to support the continuation of it.
And it'll include Oleo, right? It'll go that far east.
Oh, yeah.
That's for you, Derek.
Yes, so we have broad flexibility with how this is used. The trick will be manpower. So right now we've prepaid for some help on that front. When it comes to things like an event like Art Walk or something, there'll need to be somebody who's trained to input that data because I can't put it all in myself. So, at least if it's collected and organized and somebody hands it in a spreadsheet or something, then that could be manageable, but we'll have to talk about all the ways that it can be used and how to make it manageable to get the data in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Tim's gonna call in here in a bit. I think he's still in Columbia, so he might not make it. So let's just go to Bill Knowles. Bill, you ready? You can, yeah, there you go.
So, okay, so let's just go to Bill Knowles.
Sorry, this is
that how
Bill
this
Knowles.
starts?
This is our ombudsman for Salt Lake
I
City.
mean,
It looks cold in his house. He's wearing a coat. Go ahead, Bill.
I am in the meat locker. No, in our house, I'm in the meat locker here, which is our office downstairs. Yeah, okay, I've got some, I think some interesting updates here. We had a rather, I guess we would call it the calm before the storm, getting through the holidays, pretty quiet, relatively speaking. I mean, for Sugar House, we certainly have had a lot of stuff going on for as long as we can all remember. It was relatively quiet through the holidays with some projects wrapping up and kind of opening up the streets and everybody being happy. That's going to change here pretty soon. Not people being unhappy, but the fact is it's going to get busy again. So one of the things that we got, the first project of the new year breaking ground is the Izzy North, and that's on 21st South between 5th and 6th East. And it's been sitting there for quite a while, getting some final, actually redesign done. So it has broken ground starting this week, and its neighbor Izzy South will be following here some months behind, but they're going to focus on the north side at this point. And so that's our first real project that's kicking new into the next couple of years. And so we do have another project that went back to work Monday morning, and that was at the, Judy, are you listening to this? At the crosswalk, the soon-to-be crosswalk Hawk Light at 2150 South Highland Drive. So that got held up for the 14th or 15th time, something like that. But it is now underway and it will get done. So this will not stop until it's completed. Looks like to be a 2 to 3 week deal. There has been a couple of already minor traffic shifting situations there, but nothing dramatic. And the electrician guys are there right now, and they're going to be followed by the folks that put up the infrastructure for the light poles, et cetera, that hold up the hawk light. So that will be going on for the next 2 to 3 weeks, right there in front of Kimmy's, between Kimmy's and the that little open street into the development there. And that'll be happening for the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's active. The other one down on 21st South and 5th, 16th is active. Now we've got a bunch of other things. Oh, wait a minute. On the active, but not so active, but still active, but ongoing for the rest of my life, perhaps, is the Sugarmont Apartments. They're on McClellan and Sugarmont. And I mentioned this, I think, to you, Landon, the other day, that this, I was assured by Jeff Vitek it would be done in my lifetime. And that's kind of an insurance policy for me, because I think that's, you know, that could be any time in the next 10 to 20, 30 years. But it in fact will get done. They're right now fixing the swimming pool and the townhouses there on the McClellan side that have been completely gutted and started all over again. It will get done in the next few months, but whatever, we've had 14 or 15 dates, maybe more. We don't know when this will be done, but they're working, and that's the important thing. One of the other things that we have starting up soon, actually there'll be some action here starting Monday at the Snell Grove site. The rest of the building there that has been a kind of a de facto housing project for some of the homeless folks. Unfortunately, this time of year, having to hover in there. Well, actually, they've been there longer than that. But the fact is, it will be demoed Monday, starting Monday morning. And they wanted to start before the holidays. They actually wanted to start the week before Christmas. And we nixed that. They were under pressure to get that done and to clean it up. It's a horrible mess with what everybody might understand was a lot of stuff that had accumulated by the camping out in that area. And yet they wanted to take a lane out of 21st South and right the week before Christmas. We did not think that was a good idea. And so that got mixed and said, if it's gone on this long, you can wait another week or two. And they did. And they'll be starting this coming Monday, getting that finished. The project itself, in terms of the actual live construction, is still looking probably late spring. The last report I got from Mark Isaac, it'll be later than earlier, maybe as far as May before they actually start live construction. But it's going through and has gone through most of the hoops, and it's really set to go. There shouldn't be anything that stops that from going from this point on. Altera project is still under review. It's of course, all that the demolition has been completed for some time now, but the construction is looking to be midsummer. It's been complicated because there's 2 sites, and there's been some planning issues and design issues. So I got a long list of that here yesterday, but they are still looking at the construction by late spring to early summer. So that's going to be happening. It's now going to mention the Freeway ramp project. That's looking down the line, and I only mention that because obviously it's tied to the Freeway project, and we know that that's fallen months behind in terms of their schedule, and it will impact 13th East at some time, but not anywhere in the immediate future. So that's something to look forward to. In the more immediate future, 21st South Sewer Project will be starting up in probably mid to late spring. They're going to let the contract out, I understand, somewhere. That RFP will be going out in March, and that would suggest that there'll be probably mid-April, maybe May, before that construction starts. we're hoping for as much time as possible so that we can get the situation there at the Chick-fil-A fixed up. And we're definitely going to have just one lane of traffic when that sewer project starts. And we don't want that one lane of traffic to be the drive-in window at Chick-fil-A. So we're working with the owners there and working with some other city transportation folks to kind of help move their project along and getting an extra driveway and some relief for the streetscape there. And we think we have an answer. It's just a question of timing right now and how fast they can get that done. So that is something that's on everybody's radar and causing a little bit of nail biting in some circles, my own included. I think that just about gets through the list here. And the Sugar Alley project is moving along. We did get a complaint and had actually a couple of complaints of those guys starting early and aggravating the folks in the apartments, both to the north and south of their projects. And they've been informed of that. So if you've been hearing anything about that or had anybody report to you that there's some agitation going there, we hope to have shut that down. And it's, you know, they kind of snudge when they think they can. They're under a tight time frame. They want to get done here within whatever, I think it's about 5-6 more months they've got left. And they're not way behind, but I think they're behind that. They're trying to squeeze as much as they can. But anyway, we've reported that and again, talk to the owners of the project there to keep the rules and make sure everybody plays fair and everybody gets the sleep that they're entitled to. So that is now, I think, as much as I know. And if there's any questions.
Hey, Bill, did Boulder Ventures sell? That's one of the questions in the chat. Did Sugar
You
Mountain
know,
sell?
if they did, I haven't heard that, but if they did, I'm not surprised. I can't relate to the number of conversations I've had with Jeff Vitek, and it's been crazy. They're fully 2 years behind. I've never worked with a project or worked in all of this business that I've been in the last 20-some years and seen anything like it. So there might be some pressure there. It might be Cottonwood in partners with Cottonwood Partners. Cottonwood Residential, it's actually called. And they might have bought him out, as possible, but I have not heard or can't confirm that one way or the other.
Okay.
Mark, of course, would know more about that.
All right, thank you. And you're not just, you're not.
Okay, I feel better. I mean, I'm sure it was a slip.
Total slip.
Unintentional. Yeah,
Off.
okay. All right, I'll take it as such.
After seeing the
All's
Highland
good.
COVID line, I'm a little off tonight.
Yeah, all's good. So
All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
go Utes.
I don't see our detectives at another meeting, so he's going to jump on here in a bit. So we're going to go to Shane Stroud. It's been quite a while since our bylaws have been updated. We've taken over the chamber as part of underneath our umbrella. So he's going to kind of share a presentation. Our plan is to send out the final version after the comments tonight. And then we'll approve it by email because it's just a pain in the ass on Zoom. And then we'll approve in February. Hey, Shane, before you begin, Bob just joined us. I'm gonna have him go, okay? Hey, Bob, are you ready?
Hey, as much as I'll ever be, I guess.
You and me both.
Okay. How's everybody?
Good.
So let me get right to my correct page here. Okay. So just a couple things I wanted to discuss tonight. I don't know if you guys heard about an arson off of Elm Street recently. There's a very mentally ill gentleman that lives there. He's got some pretty significant issues. He decided to set some batteries on fire in his kitchen and then start another fire on his porch. The fire department got there pretty quick, put everything out. There were no injuries. And we are trying our best to get this guy the help that he needs. And let's see, burglaries of businesses are on the rise again, including at our friends at Sugar House Barbecue. And I'm pretty sure I know who's doing it. I just have to prove it. There's a, you guys remember the old Fisher Cyclery building? That's been a real popular place for unsheltered folks to go in and do what they do. But there's been another uptick in burglaries along that 21st South corridor and in the surrounding areas. So I've been in contact with our bike unit sergeants and some other folks to see if they can just spend a lot more time in that area to try to quell that. Your vehicle break-ins are still pretty prevalent. Your residential burglaries are not. One commonality I'm seeing is when people are reporting burglaries and thefts of high value items like laptops and other electronics and things with serial numbers, the victims in these cases don't have the serial numbers written down anywhere. So what I'm encouraging all of you is to document all of your valuables, your jewelry, your electronics, take photographs of them, take photographs of the serial numbers, have them written down. So God forbid, if your stuff does get stolen, we have those serial numbers that we can enter into the system and hopefully get your stuff back. And likewise, if you're able to get any type of surveillance on your homes or your businesses, please do that, because that also helps us with the investigation. That was pretty much it. I saw a question pop up here. The question is, what's the next step with Fisher Cycle? Is Salt Lake PD moving the people living there? I'm trying to work with the mayor's office to find the property owner to get them to secure it. That's been a work in progress over the last couple of weeks. That's the first step, is get them to take some ownership of this problem. I don't think they'll do it. I haven't had it in the past, but we do have a means of enforcing that through the city, that we can show that problems are stemming from your property. You need to take care of it, or we can take action against you. Officers have responded there multiple times and removed people from there. They've made arrests, and we're doing what we can. Ben, does that answer your question? Okay. That's all I
Thanks,
really
Bob.
had.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, it's sobering. Thank you.
All right.
Way to be positivity tonight. Thank you. All right, Shane, go ahead.
Landon, could you let me share my screen?
Yeah.
You should be good, Shane.
Okay, thanks. Let me see if I can figure this out. Oh, here we go. Oh, I have to open my system preferences to allow it to share. Let me do that really quick, because I would like to share the screen.
Hey, Shane, while you're doing that, I'm just going to say, so Nick Wilkinson's on here. He's our Beacon Heights trustee. He's part of the East Bench Master Plan group, and they're looking for any advice, recommendations for Foothill Drive, just coming from a Sugar House resident. And so he is going to put some information in the chat, and you guys can reach out to him that way, and then he can relay it to University of Utah community meeting. All right, Shane, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, did he drop off, Brandon?
Okay, sorry about that. Let me see if this will work now. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so first of all, hi everybody. the reason Landon gave me some time tonight is because I've been working with him and also Brandon for quite a few months actually, which is my fault. I could have gotten this done earlier to get some updates to our bylaws. And the real push behind this was so that we could work a little bit more cooperatively with the Sugar House Chamber of Commerce. And you'll see that change in the version that Landon sent around to everybody this afternoon. But while we were at it, we thought, why not just update the bylaws? It had been since 2004 since this had happened. So occasionally need to do that. So I promise this is not a long PowerPoint, but I think it is helpful. So what are bylaws and why update them now? Well, the Sugar House Community Council is a nonprofit corporation. It's a private entity. So under Utah law, all nonprofit corporations have to have bylaws on file with the Division of Corporations. And along with the articles of incorporation, the bylaws just dictate how the organization runs. We're not changing the articles of incorporation. They're actually in pretty good shape. They were filed in the 1970s, and I can send them to anybody that might be interested. But the bylaws actually speak a lot more to how the organization runs on a day-to-day basis. Things like the board composition of the board, meetings, the types and numbers of officers, and other provisions like how many people need to be present in a meeting in order to constitute a quorum for purposes of vote. So that begs the question, why update the bylaws now? Well, sorry, I'm just trying to adjust this so I can see a little bit better. Oops. Sorry, you can tell I'm not really familiar with PowerPoint. So the reason why is to make three types of changes. Big change, one big change, some small changes, and then some clarifying cleanup changes. So you'll see that the version that Landon sent around, it has all of these changes marked in red line. I just wanted to go through them so you have a good understanding of what's in there. And you'll see in my PowerPoint here that I've marked some in red. Those that are marked in red are changes that I made today based on feedback that I got from various trustees. So like I said, the big change here is a change that allows us to work more closely with the Sugar House Chamber of Commerce. That's section 3.9. Basically, it allows the Sugar House Chamber of Commerce to appoint one of their board members to serve as a board of trustee with the Sugar House Community Council. And likewise, the Chamber of Commerce is making a change to their bylaws that will allow one of the Sugar House Community Council trustees to serve on the Sugar House Chamber. So there'll just be more opportunity to collaborate. We'll know a lot more what the other's doing, and we'll both have that investment in the other organization. So that's the big change. Small changes. There's a change that provides notice can be made via email. I think that was probably implicit in the old bylaws, but just make it a little bit more explicit, especially since we hadn't updated these since 2004. Email wasn't quite as widely used then. Other small changes, a change that allows the chair, upon approval of the board, to waive the requirement that a new trustee gather signatures and file a petition. You'll see that language. I'll send you out an updated copy of these bylaws after the meeting is done today. You'll see that change. And this is basically just to account for, what we've experienced over the last 2 years with COVID, where folks haven't been able to gather signatures because it hasn't been safe. So, if hopefully that will end, but if we ever had a situation like that again, Landon could appoint somebody and the board could waive that requirement if need be. There's also a change that provides monthly meetings can be held electronically and talks about how those should be noticed. A change that eliminates a reference to the Public Meeting Act. So that act is actually only applicable to government agencies. And the Sugar House Community Council, like I said, is a private entity under the laws of Utah. Now, funny thing is we probably run our meetings as open or even more open than a lot of government entities, but still that law just doesn't apply. And so I struck the reference to it. There's a change that allows the chair, with the assent of the Board of Trustees, to appoint assistant secretaries and assistant treasurers. These are just folks who might help the secretaries and treasurers with their work. There's a change that specifies how expenditures should be approved. Before, you had to have 2 signatures, I think, on the checks, or at least that's kind of one way you could read the bylaws to approve any expenditure. That seems really unreasonable for like a $19 check for, flyers for a meeting. So now you'll see that if it's under $250, just has to be approval by the officer, by one of the other officer. If it's between $250 and $500, approval by a majority of the officers. And if it's over $500, the entire Board of Trustees needs to approve that expenditure. There's a change that speaks to how the Sugar House Community Council would be dissolved if that ever became necessary. Before, under the old bylaws, it could probably just be a quorum of whoever was present in a meeting that could dissolve the corporation. And this change just makes clear that it needs to be at least 3/4 of the Board of Trustees to dissolve the organization. When I say dissolve, I mean if somebody wanted to shut down the organization. And the rest are just clarifying cleanup changes. So nothing really substantive, just things to kind of bring them in line with how the law reads now and modern techniques for drafting these types of documents. So clarifying cleanup changes, a cleanup change that reorganizes and reformats the bylaws into sections and subsections, just kind of cleans it up, makes it a little bit more readable. A clarification that the Sugar House Community Council does not issue stock or pay dividends. So I know I was very disappointed when I didn't get my dividend check or my stock options from the Sugar House Community Council, but that's not what this organization is about, apparently. So I just made that clear. A clarification that the Sugar House Community Council can participate in all activities that support its mission. I think that's actually implicit in throughout the bylaws and the articles of incorporation, but this just makes it clear. There's a clarification that there are no limits to the number of terms on an otherwise qualifying trustee. Again, I think that was probably implicit in the old bylaws. This just makes it clear there aren't such things as term limits. A clarification that members of the Board of Trustees must make their primary place of residence within the Sugar House neighborhood they represent. So for example, I live in Nibley, so I petitioned in Nibley. I wouldn't go and petition in Dilworth because I don't live in that. This doesn't change the way that at-large members of the board can qualify. Somebody that's eligible for at-large membership can still gather signatures from throughout Sugar House and represent as an at-large member. So this is actually kind of how we've been doing it forever. This just makes it clear that you need to live in the district where you're a neighborhood trustee as opposed to a at-large trustee. Clarification that only natural persons can be members of the Board of Trustees. Natural person is just a legal term that means human being. And the reason that clarification is here is there's a famous line by our esteemed Senator Romney that corporations are people too. Well, that might be the case, but corporations can't be members of the Board of Trustees. They need to be human beings. A clarification that meetings are open to all members of the Sugar House Community Council. That means anybody living in or working in Sugar House, to persons residing in, owning property in, or doing business in Sugar House, and to anyone invited to participate by an officer. Clarification that a quorum is 1/3 of all Board of Trustees members present at a meeting. These next two are one clarification changes that I made today. A clarification that the annual meeting and officer elections may be held in a month other than October. Generally, they would be held in October, but it can be pushed for some reason, and that just makes it clear that's permissible. A clarification that a member of a committee need not be a trustee, but that the chair of the committee should be a trustee. And then there are some other non-substantive changes to correct typos, eliminate some archaic terminology, and enhance clarity and readability throughout the document, but nothing substantive. Those are just truly cleanup and typo corrections that I made as I was going through. One thing to note, the way that neighborhood trustees are allocated is actually through census data. We don't have that yet. At least it's not in the attachment C that I sent in the bylaws update today. So when you look at that attachment C, you'll see it's based on 2010 census data, but that will be updated to reflect the 2020 census data. And we can just raise that in a future meeting to show if there are any changes to any of the numbers of trustees that might be allocated to an individual neighborhood. Other than that, those are the changes to the bylaws, the updates to the bylaws. And like I said, I'll send you out a clean copy tonight that shows all of the changes, including the ones I made over the course of the day. But I've discussed every change that I made tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
And Shane put in a ton of work on this, so thank you, Shane. Well done. And then Shane, we were talking about how we would vote. We'll send an email out to vote with the final draft, and then we'll adopt them in February, right?
That's right. So if you look over the copy tonight, if there aren't any changes or any concerns, just go ahead and email in and that you approve the bylaw changes, and then we'll officially enact them in February and then record them with the Division of Corporations. And hopefully by that time, we'll have updates to attachment C, so you can see if the census data has changed any of the allocation of the chairs or the trustees.
I think Larry has a question for you, Shane. Larry, you can
sure.
unmute yourself. Maybe. Larry, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Okay. Thanks, Shane, for doing this. It's been several years, and every time we've tried it, it's been kind of contentious for the last little while. So, but I had a couple of items that I think should be in there. I don't think we should strike the public meetings requirement. And I don't know if that's a law or not. Like you say, it's a Utah law, which we're not subject to, but I think still we should not do away with that requirement. Another thing, the members at large, I believe that what you have says 15 members, and that sounds reasonable. My question is, does it specify how many per area maximum?
Sure. So go ahead.
And then the absentee rule for, I don't think there is a rule right now for absentees, but we've had council members who don't attend meetings, and it becomes problematic because people want to represent their area and they can't get in because a member is holding a position. I think we should have some requirement for absentees that if it becomes problematic, they should not be allowed to continue as a council member. And finally, just a question. I don't know if this is in there or not, but with committees, we've specified that the chair has to be a trustee. But the question is, can members be non-residents of Sugar House? And I think we ought to address that. I think, committee members, from my experience, they should be welcome from anywhere. It's just nice input, but anyway, that should be addressed.
Sure. So let me address each of those. As far as the absenteeism, that actually is addressed, and it's section 3.6. You can look in there. It says if a trustee fails to present at 3 consecutive meetings without being excused, they can be challenged by a new qualifying petition. So there is something in the minutes that actually speaks to replacement of a trustee that's absent for a certain number of time, for a certain amount of time. As far as members at large, the members at large do not have to be from a particular neighborhood. They can, I think you'd have to look at the language. I think it's if they own property or they own a business or they work in Sugar House. I can't remember exactly what the qualifications are for an at-large member. I didn't change any of that in these bylaws. That's how it was in the original bylaws. So that has not changed, but they do not have to live in a particular neighborhood. They just have to live within Sugar House or otherwise qualify as an at-large member within Sugar House.
Yeah, the question is, can there be more than 2 members per area?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Is there a maximum?
Yeah, that would be absolutely fine. As long as they're otherwise qualifying, they could all own a business in Dilworth, and they could all, qualify if they owned a business in Dilworth. The fact that they're all in one neighborhood doesn't disqualify them from becoming an at-large trustee, so long as there are that number of slots available. Does that answer your question?
It does. I don't like the answer, but it answers the question.
Yeah, and so that, like I said, that's how it was in the bylaws up to this point.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we can't change it, but that's how it's been. As far as committee members, right now it's limited to individuals who live or work, I think, within the borders of Sugar House. We can change that if we wanted to include anyone. It's a little odd though, because in that case, you would have members of a committee that are not members of the corporation, which is unusual. I don't think there's any legal prohibition to do that, but it certainly wouldn't be very common for somebody who's a member of a committee to not be a member of the corporation. And that requirement of membership is not a creature of the bylaws. That's a creature of the Articles of Incorporation that was filed in the 1970s. So that's who's eligible for membership in the Sugar House Community Council per the Articles of Incorporation that were filed at this point almost 50 years ago. And then as to your point about the Open Public Meetings Act, so I think I understand your point there. My only concern is that, I'm a lawyer, so speaking from that perspective, I'm a little hesitant to say we should required to follow a law that just doesn't apply to us. The Open and Public Meeting Act applies to government meetings, and it's framed in that way. And so to say this law applies, it sounds good, but if you were really looking at how it applied and you were challenging that, you would find that it's kind of apples to oranges because we're not a government entity. So, that's not a call I can make. That's something that the board as a whole should make. But if it were me, I probably would eliminate it because it's just not applicable. If you wanted to have certain parameters as to how the meeting should be held and recorded and open to the public, it might be better to actually put those particulars into the bylaws as opposed to just saying, well, this inapplicable law applies. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate all those answers and good job.
Yeah, well done, Shane. I didn't realize it was so contentious for so long, so nice job.
It was.
All right, we're gonna unmute Councilwoman Amy Fowler, and then we'll start with the representatives. Amy, I think you can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Happy New Year. And I just want to say, start out with a few thank yous. Thank all of you, District 7, for re-electing me. I look forward to another 4 years. And I don't know if any of you saw the swearing in, but I meant what I said to be better than I was last year. My New Year's resolution isn't a resolution. It's the same thing every year, and it is do better. And so that's the goal. And I want to make sure that that happens. So thank you. And I look forward to being your representative and serving you for another 4 years. I want to thank Detective Norgard for his update and for, I live on 900 East. I walk down to 21st all the time. I walk through Fairmont Park all the time. And in fact, I was actually at Trolley Wing when the Snellgrove place caught on fire because there are people experiencing homelessness in a building that was not allowed to be demolished, which is weird, or demolished, which is weird. And suddenly we were like, there's a fire outside. And immediately I called Mark and got him down there, and obviously the fire department put it out incredibly quickly, but thank goodness nobody was hurt, and that it didn't spread any further. But we are seeing an increase in these alarming things that are happening within our district. And it's something that weighs on me heavily. And I've actually, yesterday at the city council meeting, asked the administration and our other council members to look at what other cities and municipalities throughout the country are doing, which is called the Code Blue Ordinance. It's something that the county did last summer when the temperatures were rising so quickly, is having cooling areas for people to come get water and not be dehydrated. The same thing would sort of apply if we could have just literally temporary places that would open so people don't freeze. And so, I mean, I'm sure if you're on Facebook, you follow anybody that we all might know, there is a picture, a horrible picture of a person like literally frozen to the ground here in Utah, outside of one of our homeless resource centers. And there's lots of reasons, and the mayor and the council are working with the county to address these issues. But one of the things I'd like to look at is, is there an ability to just quickly open a warming center so that people are not using these abandoned buildings and starting fires to stay warm and alive, and then inadvertently lighting the place on fire, which in all reality, we've seen an increase in over the last 2 years. So somebody said, how do we get a hold of Amy? I'll put all my contact information in the chat. But so that's something that I really want to work on and look at. And I appreciate Detective Nordgaard for asking the bike patrol to kind of patrol that area a little bit more, because we are seeing a lot more people in that area. We have quite a bit of abandoned space over there on 9th and 21st. And it is prime real estate for those people that are experiencing homelessness. So thank you, Detective. And I want to continue working on how we address that issue. And you all know I don't know the full answer, but we're trying. I also really want to give a shout out to Lori Bray. You saw in the chat, hopefully, that I finished my year as chairperson of the Salt Lake City Council. And as a gift, the council staff and other council members gave me a frame made out of a Siberian elm, which is native to, or grows natively here in Fairmont Park, which you all know is a park I go to often, and with a beautiful picture that Lori took of the sunset in Fairmont Park. And I thought that I had it here at my house, but it's actually still in my council office, or I would show you. But next meeting, I'll make sure to show you all, because it's absolutely lovely. And thank you, Lori, for that. I truly appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Shane Shroud, I wish I was half as smart as you are as an attorney. Thank you so much for all of your work with the bylaws and going through all of that. Having opened my own nonprofit at one point, that is not easy, and it's incredibly time consuming. And truly want to thank you, Shane, for all of that hard work and dedication to this community. The other thing I wanted to talk about that actually Shane sort of reminded me of is the census and redistricting. As everybody knows, we do have some of our census results back, most of them, all of them, and are working on the redistricting. Per state law, we only have 6 months from the day that the state decides the final redistricting lines to when we as a city council decide our redistricting lines. So that will be May. I'm looking at Laura Stevens, as you guys know, I introduced her last time we were here, but she's interning with the city council staff in Lovely and reminds me of things that I forget. But but it's May something. It's May 6th, May 15th, something along those lines, that we as a city have to have our redistricting lines drawn. And we as a city council are currently looking for subcommittee members so the subcommittee members will do the outreach to help draw the lines that will then come to the city council or make the recommendations. I believe, Landon, I'm not sure, but I believe that you, and if you haven't, then you will, but people within Sugar House Community Council trustees have hopefully gotten letters asking for referrals. We want people on the subcommittee from all of the different areas within Salt Lake City. Want to make sure that it is actually representative of our city. And so that we're being very transparent and open about how we make sure that the subcommittee has people on it from all over the city, and then really looking at the boundaries and what we're looking at. So it will be a quick process because we're already in January and we have to have this finalized by May. And May sometimes in my head seems like a long way away, but before we know it, it will be here. So please, if you know somebody that you think would be a good candidate for that subcommittee on redistricting, have them reach out. I'll ask Laura to make sure that the information for the subcommittee gets in the chat and to Landon and to the Sugar House Community Council so that we can put it on the website if you so choose. But obviously that is incredibly important. And if you didn't catch our city council meeting yesterday, we did have Mallory from the Ken Gardner Institute come and talk about the census results and what we've learned from it. Our district is about 652 people below what every district should be if every district had all of the same numbers in it. That's about 2%. And the way that generally we have drawn district is that there is about a 2 to 3% give on that. If everything were equal and we just said, this is the number of people that we have with the census, we're dividing it by 7, every district would have 28,540 something people or something like that, right? But we give and take about 2 to 3% on that just for boundary issues and communities and not wanting to break people up for no reason, right? Or break neighborhoods up for no reason except for numbers. And so we're within that same, just with the area that we have right now, we're within that 2 to 3%. That doesn't mean those lines couldn't change, which is again why it's so important that we have a subcommittee and that we're actually looking at these lines. The interesting thing, if you go back to yesterday's meeting, the interesting thing to me is that District 4, which is downtown Salt Lake City, has over 6,000 people more than that 28,500 sort of median. And District 2, which is just on the west side, right, has 4,500 less than that. So I was joking yesterday with Alejandro and Ana that we just have to give half of Ana's district over to Alejandro and we'll be fine, right? But really it's not as simple as that. But those are some of the numbers, and all of that is on our city council website from yesterday's meeting. So please look at it. Let me know if you have any questions. The other thing I just quickly wanted to touch on is that at the end of last year, we did allocate I believe, and Landon, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was around $60,000 for the Sugar House Business District, and looking at actually having sort of a downtown, the similarity of a downtown alliance, but a Sugar House alliance. And so I'm excited for that. The allocation will go to looking at what the maps are, the SAA, that whole process, which, to be fair, is it is a state law thing that we have to go through, but Landon and the chamber have been working incredibly hard on, and not just this last year, but for years, on trying to get this to go through. And so there has been an allocation of money to the Department of Economic Development to help us as Sugar House look at what sort of Sugar House alliance would look like. And I know that there will be some community outreach with that, and would hope that everyone would participate in what those what the maps there look like as well. Trying to think if there's anything else that right now that I can think of. We are entering the legislative session, as you know, because all of our legislators are here. Thank you. It's good to see all of you, by the way. And so we will also, as City Council, will be doing legislative updates. We have a legislative subcommittee that I'm part of. If there are questions about bills that come up and where Salt Lake City stands or what we're doing, please reach out to me and my liaison in the team, and we'll try to get back with you as soon as possible. We do meet with our lobbyists regularly. We go to the LPC meetings and really want to make sure that we have the voices of Salt Lake City represented as well up at the legislature. And then, of course, we will sooner than we all think, be headed into budget season. So I like, as soon as January hits, I start thinking of all of the things that will have to happen right up until about June 15th, when the budget is finally finalized. But those are some of the updates for right now. We will make sure to get my contact information in the chat so everyone knows how to get a hold of me. I also want to say I have thank you cards that I haven't written, or that I have written but haven't sent because the holidays and the things. But to all of you during a difficult time for me, I want to thank you for your support during that. I got your cards, and thank you for that. So with that, and we'll answer any questions in the chat.
All right, thank you. All right, Will, I'm going to turn the time over to Will Coker. Will, you should be a co-host now.
Okay, I think I'm good, Landon.
Okay.
So, as Councilmember Fowler said, the legislative session is set to begin. That'll start January 18th. So it's kind of an exciting time and a nerve-wracking time. We're very fortunate to have great representatives for our area. So tonight we're joined by Senators Davis and Iwamoto, Representatives Briscoe, King, and Pitcher. And they're going to kind of give us a legislative preview, what to expect, bills that we may see in the upcoming session, that kind of thing. Due to the format and being a Zoom, we're not going to be able to answer a lot of questions, but please feel free to drop those in the chat. Hopefully we'll be able to get those answered. So where we'd like to start, our first question would be, for Senator Davis, what were your thoughts on the redistricting process? How did the redistricting process affect your district's boundaries? And what changes should residents be aware of?
And there we go. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to appear before the Sugar House Community Council. As I take a look, and I was a member of the redistricting committee, and we looked at all of those issues. We also heard from and took testimony from the commission. as they presented their presentation on the different maps that they had. They had 3 different maps for all 4 areas, which was the House, the Senate, Congress, and the state school board. And I think it had great interest and hearing. We heard that. We then went to the floor, and the chairs came up with the maps and presented them to our various bodies, and they were adopted. The committee maps were adopted, not the commission maps, as everyone knows. The commission actually couldn't come up with a preferred map in the Senate, House, Congress, or in the state school board. So they couldn't give us a hearty recommendation. So it kind of left us to, in fact, the chairman of the committee told us in our committee meeting that what would happen is we could change anything they had presented to us and move it around because they knew that's what we were going to do anyway. So I don't think the commission took their charge as seriously as they probably could have or should have. And as far as District 13 now, which used to be District 3, it is now District 13, did not change, except it evened out on 17th South between 5th East and State Street. And then also in Murray, picked up the west side of, all of the west side of Murray on the other side of 215, which I didn't have before. So that is the new district. Other than that, it basically did not change. The district only had to pick up roughly 5,000 people to meet that 12,000, or excuse me, 120,000 plus people.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to Senator Iwamoto next. And, you know, same question, you know, your thoughts on the redistricting process, you know, what you might like to see the next time around, how it's affected your district,
Okay.
et cetera.
Some reason that unmute keeps
There we
going.
go.
Okay. I want to thank Will and Landon for planning this every year. And I miss the time that we were up at the senior living place and we could have donuts and all be together. So, but thank you for doing that. I just had one update before I get into that, is that 2700 East or South in Salt Lake City, there's been a lot of speeding and I've been getting a lot of complaints. And so I just wanted to say that Chief Brown is working on that, and they're coming up with some plan on how to resolve that. So that's just a separate thing. With regard to new districting, I did put a lot in my newsletter because it was a very emotional time for me. But I think I talked to, when I won city county council, that was a priority to have an independent districting commission. And we actually had 3 maps and we voted on them. We got to look at them. And it was evenly 3 Republican, 3 Democrat, and then an independent. This was different, but of course I supported the independent redistricting commission, and it did change by compromise. It's not the exact same. I think the parallel commissions, legislative and the legislative and the independent going at the same time, giving a lot of going around the state together. I think the parallel commissions were a little confusing, but it's what our Constitution says. The legislature has the last word. So the congressional and school board, no input whatsoever. Very disappointing. I voted against that, and I think everyone, I'm not sure, but voted against that because it really changed certain things on the school board, pitting 2 very good board members together. And the congressional, of course, split my district. I think Salt Lake City twice, Murray twice, Mill Creek 4 times. I think that I actually think my district was cut up the most by this. And And then on my district itself, it changed. There were 3 commission maps. We tried to substitute in the orange map, if you, what looked like more of my district. And in the end, I did vote with the legislative map because I talked to my mayors and they did not like the independent redistricting map, which split them into 2 counties for the first time. It would have been with Summit County. And so we went with the legislative map, which added Murray to this district. I was very sad. I got very emotional in my speech because it cut out the parts of Salt Lake that I grew up in and I've represented since my county council days. And so it was kind of emotional that saying goodbye, but it's not about me. That was my one personal note. It's about the district itself. And so I did talk to Karen Hale, who was on the on the independent redistricting, and I talked to her about it. And I asked her, why did those maps split it into 2 counties? And anyway, she said, you're my senator and you can vote the other way. She gave me her blessing because I was very torn, just on that issue. It does make the district a little more conservative, but I did think that both commissions, the independent and the legislative, which Jean was on, I thought they all put in a lot of time and effort. And so I think it was a huge process. And so my new district now, this was a Senate gift by the Senate president. And I've got a frame picture. And I said, is it of the old district? But it's of the new. So 4 becomes 14. And basically it takes away from 9th South all the way to 17th South out of the District 4. So it takes out a lot of the heart of Salt Lake City, but I'm so grateful I still have Sugar House in my district and this district, District 14, when it comes up. And so the process, it was a difficult day. It was a difficult process, but it happens every 10 years and hopefully it'll be better in 10 years. But thank you so much for all of you. And I'm glad that this district still has Sugar House in it.
Great, thank you. Representative Briscoe, we'll go to you next.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. This is strange with headphones on. It's like listening to yourself for the first time on a tape recorder. I am still angry that they divided Salt Lake City into 2 congressional districts. 11 years ago, we were complaining that Rob Bishop in the 1st congressional district represented everything west of 7th East in Salt Lake City. And from many of our points of view, it meant nothing to him. And we said, we want Salt Lake City in 1 congressional district. And they mostly complied, but they didn't understand that Salt Lake City goes south of I-80. They had no qualms in splitting. I mean, I love my cousins who live in Providence, Utah, and who live in Smithfield, Utah, and we're now in the same congressional district. There's no reason for that other than they knew that if they created any kind of congressional district that Ben McAdams could run in, he would, and he would win, likely. So they created 4 districts. That meant that 4 Republicans would represent those districts. I'm still angry about that. As far as the map, I'm happy that we had an independent redistricting commission. We knew that they were independent, but they could not force the legislature to take their maps. But the comparison of them having all their meetings in public and the redistricting commission, the legislative commission, having meetings behind the scenes and then saying these are our maps, is one that will still be reverberating, in my opinion, in many people's minds in 10 years. Sitting legislators did have some input on the legislative maps. On the floor of the House of Representatives, I sponsored the orange map for House legislative seats. I knew it didn't have much of a chance, but I sponsored it. Democrats sponsored at least 1 of the legislative independent redistricting commission maps for Congress, school board, state senate, House of Representatives. I sponsored the orange map. That map would have moved me out of the district I currently represent into a district represented by Jennifer Daly Prowell. District 25, which I've represented since 2010, is now District 24. It moves all the way west to I-15. It moves all the way south to I-80. The north boundary is 4 south. What used to be a clean line between Representative King's district is at 23, was 13th East. That's now 13th East down to 9th South, and it goes west to 11th East, and it's 11th East down to 17th South, and it moves west to 9th East, and it goes down to I-80. So Representative King picks up a larger chunk of Sugar House. But I'm still part of this community council, and I'll still be hanging around.
Great. We're glad to hear that. So we'll go to you, Representative King, next.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. The Sugar House Community Council has always been remarkably smoothly functioning. I've always been impressed, and you accomplish great things. And as Representative Briscoe said, I'm excited about the idea that old District 28 becomes new District 23 and has more of the Sugar House Community Council area within it. Right now, as Representative Briscoe mentioned, the boundary is 13th East. That will change so that between 17th South and 21st, well, between 17th South and I-80, the boundary will go down to 9th East, and between 17th South and 8th South, the boundary will be 11th East. So I'm excited about the prospect of having a greater area of Sugar House to represent. Great people there. I'm looking forward to that. I do agree with those other folks that have, legislators who have expressed concern about the redistricting process. I don't think that that was done particularly for the congressional district in a way that was a reflection of good principles of redistricting. I certainly don't think it kept the communities of interest in Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County together in a way that makes sense. But this is one of the things that you have a problem with when you're in such a clear minority up in the legislature as the people that are here on this call with you as representatives of the Sugar House Community Council are all Democrats, and we have a super majority Republican legislature, as you all know, and that creates some problems for us. But having said that, we work hard to get along with our colleagues and to accomplish some good things to represent well the people in the community council, and we can accomplish some good things. I'm happy to talk just for a moment about some of the things that we see coming up in the upcoming session. We're going to see some issues about income tax cuts, perhaps, from the majority caucus. And I think that that's something that gives me a great deal of concern, simply because I think that we have tremendous needs that we could meet and should be meeting in terms of education needs, clean air needs, needs for some of our social services to do a better job providing mental health resources for treatment of substance use disorders, resources for affordable housing, which of course is such a critically important issue. We've seen housing costs, both rental and homeownership costs, just skyrocket in Utah. And it's squeezing so many people out of the market and really creating hardship. We need to do a better job up with the legislature of providing affordable housing resources. And my hope is that that happens. There have been some good things that the governor has said in his proposed budget. I've heard other people express a desire to make some progress on those kinds of issues about affordable housing and about such things as making sure that we provide greater relief in the form of reduced sales tax on groceries. Governor has a grocery tax credit that he's talking about. There are some concerns, I think, on the part of us as Democrats about whether that's the best way of delivering the kind of relief that people who are really struggling to make ends meet, whether that the best way to do that is to do it the governor's way, because the people who are in the greatest need are not going to be hanging around trying to file income taxes or get tax credits every year, and they need the relief immediately. So if we could target sales tax on food in a way that delivered relief at the time they purchased those food items, that would be a better way to approach it, I think. Most Democrats feel that way anyway.
That's great. And, you know, I do want to get to Representative Pitcher on the redistricting. I know her district changed dramatically, and we are going to come back to some of those larger themes that we're going to see during the session. So Representative Pitcher, could you speak to what's going on in your district?
Yeah, I can. And I apologize, I'm not able to connect my camera at the moment. I'll be home in just a second. I'm in transit. But so HD 40 was changed significantly. It used to be a north-south running district, and it's now an east-west running district. So the current lines of HD 40 are from I-80 to about 5600 south or so, and then between 7th East and Highland Drive, with some gerrymandering sort of on the north and south ends. It's switched now so that the eastern boundary is, I believe, on Hartford Avenue. And then it runs all the way as far west as the Jordan River, and then spans from I-80 until about 3300 south. So it's pretty significantly different, although I think my Sugar House area remains pretty much unchanged. It's more the Mill Creek side that's quite different. And, you know, I guess I'll just add to my colleagues' shared disappointment with the way that the independent commission was sort of summarily rejected by my colleagues at the legislature. I think that, I mean, even the conversation on the House floor was shut down really quickly. And the whole process I found to be really disappointing. Hopefully, you know, in 10 years, we can have a better process in place that actually takes into account the will of the people. But this is where we are.
Okay, great. So the next question we have is, with the session set to begin January 18th, what bills are each of you planning to run? And what would you like our community to know about these bills? So we'll start with Senator Davis.
Okay. Once again, right now I have 3 bills that are out. One is a committee bill that I've been trying to get through for years. This would allow individuals to be able to approach the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control and order less than a case of spirits that are not currently floored at DABC. We've been working on that as we worked last year on getting the wages up at DABC, which brings up an issue also, and that's the fact that we need to take some of this tax money or surplus money that we have, and we need to make sure that we address the needs of the state employees. Some of them are working for $9 an hour, and we need to take a look at our HR and what we're doing in that area. But that's one of my bills. It would allow you to order any of the spirits that you want that are not floored. Another one I have was actually brought by a constituent of mine whose wife had a stroke, and he bought her a van that she could drive, but her driver's license lapsed. And so he could not transfer the title into her name because she did not have a valid driver's license. So I've worked with the State Tax Commission to fix that problem. I think we've done that. And another bill that I've got, actually, it's in the process of being put together right now. And that would make the insurance companies have to respond to COVID-19, and they could automatically, COVID-19 would become a pre-existing condition instead of just a general flu condition that they covered for the immediate coverage, but any long-term effects would be covered by your health insurance as well. So that's one that I've got coming forward. Another one that I have, I take a look at the medical marijuana issue in the state of Utah, and it's being controlled by agriculture and the health department, and not addressing really a lot of the needs that those who have prescriptions to obtain some of those materials. And so I've looked around the country at what's going on in many different jurisdictions and settled on trying to adopt the Massachusetts Commission, which would then control cannabis and marijuana, medical marijuana, from the seed to the sale of that product. So it'd all be in one smooth area instead of $100,000 per farm going to the agriculture department and $100,000 per pharmacy going to the health department. This would alleviate a problem in that chain of getting the medical product to market. So that's the other one that I'm working on right now. There's a couple of others that I have that I'm looking at, and I haven't decided whether I'm going to do those or not.
Okay, thank you. Senator Iwamoto, how about you? What do you have in store for this session?
Unmute. There we go. Okay, I'll go fast. I'm going to do a newsletter soon and it will summarize too. But I have a local election amendments that I've worked with and it passed unanimously. It's so that if there's an uncontested race, we can not have that race. So like in Holiday, the mayor was uncontested, one district was uncontested, but they had to send it and one was contested. So this would allow just that one contested race to have to send out ballots to. But under the law, we'd have to send it out. It had to be sent out to the whole city because the mayor was running and people were really upset, especially at the clerks, and it's not their fault that we paid for a ballot to come out with no one's running against the mayor. So that's one of the bills. I have a ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act. This is to work with the Native community and one of their highest priorities this year. And it's to elevate and put the office, there's a new Office of American Indian Alaska Native Affairs in the new Health and Human Services consolidation. And it's to elevate that from Human Services and then the health for Native Americans. I worked on 2 years ago to get funding for an office that will move and it's closer to the governor where they can consolidate and have tribal consultations and everything and be right under the governor in the administration. And the ICWA statute was done federally to the Native American children are overrepresented in the foster care because they were removed, years and years ago from the tribal families to have assimilation. And so this is something that the federal government is their highest priority. And this is to elevate those offices in the state. I have a driver speeding amendments that I'm working on. I've gotten lots of emails on that one, but we're over 100 miles per hour. We will define as reckless, which will be a B misdemeanor. Also, Chief Brown wanted me to add car racing. That's kind of become a huge deal especially in the Northwest quadrant where thousands of people come. And so it's to elevate a portion of that to an A misdemeanor, and a spectator will remain a B. It's already illegal, but this will make it so. And just for for the 100 mile per hour, it's at a speed where it's just increased astronomically in the last 2 years. So I've been working on that with Colonel Rapich, and it's a 100 mile per hour is where you most likely would never survive, and also where you can't adjust. You can't. There has to be a perfect. You can't adjust in your car. So that one, I have some. We had the Great Salt Lake thing today, and I was just going to report water banking, which I sponsored for 3 years to get funding, and then the legislation. But we're using water banks, and Salt Lake City is to direct water and shepherd it to the Great Salt Lake. So that's been starting, and it's been successful so far. But along with that, I'm doing a plumbing. A plumbing is flow rates and quantity for plumbing fixtures, and so for toilets and urinals and shower heads and faucets in your, not kitchen faucets, but to have a more water sense strategy for new builds and for remodels. And that has gone through the plumbing committee and the building. and it's passed, the home builders can't build if they don't have water. So that one is an important one for water that I'm working on with the conservancy districts and cities and everyone. I have a correctional officer eligibility. Years ago, I did that to allow 19-year-olds to become correction officers in jails, but now it's worked out well in the county during their pilot programs in the jails. And so we're doing that now in the state wants to do that. Of course, it won't be in high risk jobs. I have one with the earthquake preparedness with the early warning system to get an appropriation for that. I have a officer intervention and reporting amendment that I've been working with law enforcement, district attorneys, AGs, and community organizations. It's something that I've been working on for 2 or 3 years, but I think we've come to a point where Chief Wallenstein really wanted this to go because we have to change the culture in our police and law safety where reporting and intervening is something good. It protects our officers as well. I have a court fee waiver amendment that just defines more to give the courts less discretion on, it gives them some guidelines on if you're under the SNAP or TANF or what defines indigency. So it's not just discretionary. It has a discretionary element to it, but it gives 3 different guidelines which can be used. I have another water amendments where we have conservation plans for culinary water systems and also for their rates that they have to report. And then others have come from Salt Lake City residents too, appropriation for celebrating the peoples of Utah. I can go in later. One is to support the Adoptees Citizens Act, and that's came from Sarah Dancy Jones, who was adopted to an American family here from South Korea when she was young. And she was lucky because her parents naturalized her, but due to a technical glitch in the federal statute, many of these adoptees have found out they weren't ever naturalized. And so they could be deported, and they didn't come here on their own accord. They were adopted. And so it's about keeping families together. I also have a long-term service and support study that I'm working on with the disability and the aging communities to look at some of the efforts that they want to do. And they feel that we could get federal money to study this within 3 years. And I think I have a lot. And then I'm working on some with Republican legislators who have, or other legislators on a continuing effort for getting childcare and schools water testing requirements for lead. And I think with the Biden administration, it's a priority for getting lead out of the water. Working with Representative Romero on tribal regalia, that, and with the Judicial Performance Evaluation Commission amendments, and then an education one also. That's just a summary, and I'll send a summary later. Thank you.
Wow, you're going to have a busy session.
It's going to be busy.
Representative Briscoe.
That's probably half of the senator's bills. She's very energetic and she works very hard. I'm going to return to a theme that Senator Davis started with. 2 summers ago, I had a constituent, 80 years old, email me and ask me why in Utah he could get online with a local grocery store, order food, have food delivered to him, but he couldn't have beer delivered to him. So I think people ought to be able to get online and have beer delivered to their homes. Over 21, of course. People ask me, well, let's do wine and other things. We're going to start with beer. That will be a heavy enough lift. Let's see if we can make that happen. I'm interested in making sure, I'm convinced that the number of people buying electric vehicles is going to, the chart is going to start looking exponential in a few years. People who own single family homes can simply pay someone to install a charger. But if you live in an apartment building or a condominium, it's a little bit trickier. There are about 8 or 9 states that have what they call right to charge laws. I think we should do the same in Utah. If you live in a condo or multi-unit housing and you want to purchase or have purchased an EV and you're willing to pay the cost of installation, meet some minimal requirements, I think you ought to be allowed to put in a charger for your electric vehicle. On the clean energy front, I'm sponsoring the creation of Utah Clean Energy Fund, which will become maybe possible if Senator Manchin and the Biden administration figure out their differences. Colorado and Nevada have created clean energy funds in the last few years. I think Utah should do the same. Also on the clean energy front, we've had some experiments with having people not have free fares on bad air days. People like my wife who have asthma, every day is a bad air day. Some days are worse than others. I think we should have free fares on mass transit 365, 24/7. I just think we don't pay people, we don't charge people to ride the elevator to the top of a building. Why do we pay people to ride anywhere on public mass transit? And Senator Davis and I are working on a concurrent resolution on homelessness. And boy, are their opinions on homelessness. So we're going to try and thread multiple needles on that one. There might be some other pieces of legislation. We'll see.
Okay, thank you for the update. Representative King, we'll go to you next.
Thank you. I've got several bills that I'm preparing and have prepared, and I think that they've got some great things about them, but let me go through them quickly. Maybe the most important bill is a bill to preserve forensic biological evidence for felonies from the time the case is being actively investigated or an individual is convicted of a felony, remains in prison. This will help with investigating cold cases and allow for more definitive results when dealing with claims of wrongful conviction. Right now, Utah has no obligation to preserve that type of evidence, and whether it's a cold case that technology results in being able to pursue leads that at the time of the crime we couldn't pursue, or whether it's a claim of wrongful conviction, I think it's important that we preserve that biological forensic evidence for use. Most of the states in the country do that. 2/3 of them do. Utah doesn't, and we can do a better job on that. The second case is right now, if you're a state employee covered by PEHP and you become disabled due to mental health conditions, you are able to get disability benefits only for 2 years, whereas if you're disabled due to physical conditions, you can get the disability benefits until you turn 65. It's just a statutory discrimination between disability caused by mental illness or versus disability caused by physical illness. I've got a bill to eliminate that disparity. It's going to cost some money, but PHP is on board as long as we do come up with the money to help with that. A third bill is making it illegal to post a video of a felony occurring if the person who posts the video has not reported the felony to public safety officials before they post it. Doesn't outlaw posting of a felony on social media. It just says that you can't post it unless you report the felony before you post it. There's another bill that I've got to require the Department of Public Safety and other relevant state agencies or subdivisions of the state to produce an annual report identifying the source of firearms when they are obtained by restricted persons. We want to know the source of the weapons that end up in the hands of restricted persons. This is an informational requirement. We've got that information. We're going to be able to do a better job of keeping weapons out of the hands of restricted persons. And then finally, I've got a bill that I've run a couple of times in the past to expand background checks before the purchase of firearms are allowed. It's a good idea. Overwhelming support among members of the public. Over 90% say, let's have basic background checks before you can purchase a weapon. That'll cut down on the number of people who obtain a weapon who shouldn't have them because they're on the restricted list. That's I've got a couple other things, but time is short, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Pitcher, we'll go to you next.
Okay, thank you. So I have a few bill files. I'll just go over maybe 3 of them. One would create a victim address confidentiality program. This is a bill that I have run in the past, but due to sort of timing issues with the legislature, wasn't able to see it all the way through. Essentially, the idea of the bill is that if you're a victim of domestic violence, stalking, sexual assault, things like that, you can apply for a type of fictitious address. And the CCJJ with the state would sort of oversee the program, but essentially your physical mail would be routed to CCJJ by way of a fictitious address, and then the program will forward your address to your location. It's really a way to sort of keep your address safe, protected out of the hands of an offender, domestic violence offender. And 41 other states have already done this, so I'm hopeful that Utah will be next. I think now is particularly timely that we've seen so many domestic violence cases go up under COVID and sort of consequences of the pandemic. So I'm hopeful that that one will be well received. I also have a bill, or I'm working on a bill that would create sort of a voluntary program for individuals with underlying mental health issues. If they so choose, they can place a marker on their driver's license, as well as have it registered at with the Department of Public Safety, so that when an officer is running a check on someone's license plate, or if they encounter an individual on the street and they see the marker on their license plate, that law enforcement officer will sort of know going into their interaction with this individual that there may be an underlying mental health issue, which would influence the dynamic or the interaction between those individuals. And so the hope with that is that it will sort of flag law enforcement early and hopefully de-escalate any potential interaction that may be sort of out of the norm from the officer's perspective. And then another bill that I'm working on would close the out-of-county loophole that exists for registering vehicles. So currently you can register your vehicle with the DMV and provide any random address. People can register with that address. And if they're registering in a county that is a non-emissions county, they can avoid emissions testing altogether. My hope is that by requiring an individual to provide 2 to 3 pieces of mail, that will sort of close that loophole and make sure that the individuals are actually registering their vehicle in the county where they actually reside. The bill may also include some type of civil penalty as well, maybe $1,000 or so for individuals who provide false information when they're registering their addresses. Of course, the hope there is to keep vehicles in that don't bypass that process. So those are the main 3. I do have others that are in the works, but I think these are probably the most relevant and interesting. We're still able to open bill files, so if anybody has an interesting idea or a problem or an issue that they think needs to be addressed, please contact me. I'm very happy to look at it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to our final. And that is, what do you anticipate as being some of the larger legislative discussions this session? What issues should residents of the Sugar House community pay particular attention to? And we'll start with Senator Davis.
Thank you. As I battle back and forth with your controller on the mute, unmute. I think one of the things that we're going to look at is clean air, of course, is going to be one of those foremost issues. And I attended, as I think most of my colleagues did today, complete morning session on nothing but the Great Salt Lake and the environmental impact if we lose the lake, what's going to happen to our quality of life. And there's a number of issues on dust storms and everything else. I think that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of discussion during the upcoming session to try to deal with how we're going to get the water back into the lake. There was a number of proposals that were presented by the presenters. I think that's going to be, as I say, one of the big issues. And that will contribute largely to cleaning up the air in Salt Lake City if we can get rid of some of that dust that's coming off the Great Salt Lake. I think food security is also an issue that's going to be high on the issue. I know Senator Escamilla was chaired a food security task force during the summer as chair of the local food advisory committee. I've also been looking at that issue, creating a food hub and doing some other things to help with the food shortages that we actually have. And hunger is a problem, a major problem in the state of Utah. And affordable housing, of course, is always going to be on our radar screen. We've done a lot of things over the years, but I think the one thing is we keep talking about affordable housing. And what we really need to do is that housing has to be affordable to people of low income. And that's a problem that we're going to have. And I think wages are also going to be an issue that we're going to talk about during this upcoming session. So those are just a few of the highlights, I think. Looking forward to my colleagues stating where they think we're going to be also, so we can get on the same page.
Okay, Senator Iwamoto, what do you think the hot topics will be?
Okay, there we go. I forgot to add one that I am doing affordable housing with Mayor Karoon, which is kind of fun because we were on the council together. So that is another bill. But I think water, like Senator Davis said, the Great Salt Lake has impacts economically, air, water. I think more people are looking at water since we've had the drought and we've had fires. And so water is huge because 2 cities last year were not able to, didn't have any water. They had to have it trucked in, and it's huge for us to do that. But we have worked as a state really well to prepare, unlike other states that were presented where Owens Lake and all these others that have dried up and all the cost, the billions of dollars it's cost their state. But we have been working on things for a long time. So we do have tools that we can use. Affordable housing, of course, homelessness, I think will be big. Income tax rate, I heard that they may try to decrease that. Social security tax. Some highlights, mental health for first responders. I heard there's going to be some appropriations for that are looked into. Death penalty, and some of the scary ones to me, the voter ones that are coming up are, you know, I hope there's not many voter suppression bills, but I've been hearing some. The transgender in sports, I heard, is going to have to be dealt with, and critical race theory. And the critical race theory upsets me greatly because you know, just the story of the Japanese Americans incarcerated in Topaz. If you go to Topaz and read the stories and just go there to the museum, that is what critical race theory is, how laws can be done to take away people's rights and discriminate. And us not talking about that, it's not being talked about in the schools at all, in the public schools, but I learned it in law school. I even know the woman one of the people who started the curriculum for that. So it's just a national movement going on with the transgender sports and abortion bills. I heard there will be some of those, and vaccination, not having mandates and that. So there's some scary ones, but I'm hoping the water conservation and a lot with infrastructure, the right kind of infrastructure will be dealt with. And so those are the things that I can think of. And I kind of had a summary made of the bills that are public right now, and I send it to Landon, and it's just a summary, and it kind of groups them together of what, because this year we do have a lot of money, but it's, we're trying to do just one-time money because, you know, for the future, setting aside money, but we have the federal funds as well. So, but there's always more needs than there are, you know, funding. So, but I think mental health will be a big issue as well.
Great, thank you. Representative Briscoe.
So you might just have to shut off my mic because people have started pushing my buttons and I could go off on any one of these for a long, long time. Water. I appreciated what we were shown today. I didn't learn anything new from the Great Salt Lake Summit. I'm sure it was new for many of the legislators who are there. I serve on natural resources and the Legislative Water Development Commission. They will tell you that we're doing a great job on water conservation, which is bunk, which is nonsense. They said we've made 25% reductions in water use, and they took the baseline year as one of the highest water use years. We need to revisit significantly our water conservation goals and targets. I am incredibly concerned about the dredging of Utah Lake. We attended a 4.5-hour meeting today, and we talked about all these various state and federal agencies and private companies and nonprofits who just love the Great Salt Lake and want to make sure it doesn't go away. And our solution to the fact that we have some problems in Utah Lake is we're going to let some developers from Dubai come in and do the biggest dredging project ever envisioned anywhere, create some islands in the middle of Utah Lake and put 400,000 people on them. And this is going to fix Utah Lake. The legislature gave them a $10 million loan last year. And there's $25 million for the Utah Lake Restoration Project in the governor's budget. So be ready on that one. I'm concerned about the big lie. I'm concerned that there are people trying to claim that you can't trust your ballot in Utah. And there will be an effort made to take away vote by mail. I don't think that's got traction because I think most people like it. But I'm concerned anytime anyone gives any kind of credence whatsoever to that garbage. And my concern about CRT, critical race theory, is that they're using it as a stand-in for teaching about racism and structural inequality in our society. I mean, I have former students and friends who are law enforcement officers, and they're fine individuals. But like teachers and a few other people, if you get a bad one, they're in a position to do an incredible amount of damage. And I know of people, and I've spoken to people who are people of color in this community, not Salt Lake City, but in Salt Lake County, in the last 2 or 3 years who've been pulled over, who've made the mistake of driving while colored, be black, driving while black, and a police officer pulled them over, pulled down their window and said, "You don't look like you should be driving a car this nice." That happens today. We need to be talking about that today. More and more of our students in classes today have skin that doesn't look like mine. And I'm outraged that we're even discussing some of these topics. Makes me angry. I'll shut up.
Thank you. Representative King.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to add simply because I said some of these things before. I'm happy to see the GSL being taken and us taking a hard look at that. I think we ought to continue to figure out how we're going to best spend the money that we have. There's a lot of money floating around. Some of it comes from the federal government through the COVID appropriations. Some of it comes because we've got a very healthy economy in Utah. I want to make sure that we appropriate that in the way that addresses the needs of people who are in the greatest stress and have the biggest problems right now making ends meet and providing for their basic needs, that it goes to them in a way that helps them the most. So we'll be looking hard at that. It'll be an interesting session. There'll be a lot of, it's an election year, so there are going to be some issues dealing with posturing about cultural and divisive issues such as the transgender stuff and the CRT stuff and the abortion stuff. You'll see all that. We always do. We'll try and keep that from being a distraction from the things that are most important, but it'll be an interesting session, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Pitcher, to you, please.
don't think I have anything to add. My colleagues have pretty much covered it all. I'll just say Representative Yamamoto mentioned the issue of the death penalty coming up this session, a repeal of the death penalty. My take on that is that this may be the first time, at least in a while, that we actually talk about repealing the death penalty in a meaningful way. I think it has a really good sponsor. I think there's an appetite among several of my colleagues to have this conversation. So I'm looking forward to that. But in terms of other issues, I think my colleagues have captured it all.
Okay, great. Thank you. And, thank you to all of our guests for joining us. I said it earlier and it's been said in the chat, but we really are lucky to have some fantastic representatives for Sugar House, and we're appreciative of your service. I know from personal experience, and I think most would agree that anytime we reach out to all of you, you're responsive, you listen to us, and you really give a strong voice to our community. So thank you all. We really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. Landon just texted me and said that we are adjourned. So thank you, everybody. It's been a great meeting. It should be an interesting session. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us tonight.